I'm trying to find, this is the one I want. I just love this drawing. This was a card sent to the Spokane Sangha by our friend Lynn, who is often here listening. She calls in from Montana. And I just love the little bubbles. They make me so happy. This one reads, May layers of unwanted thought peel away into bright dreams. May layers of unwanted thought peel away into bright dreams. What a lovely intention to set for our practice today. And it's a perfect stepping stone into this mindfulness practice, exploring the mind. For the month of May in the Spokane Sangha, we are taking a deep dive into the 4 foundations of mindfulness. We've been exploring the body. We've been taking a look at the mood and our emotional landscapes. And this week, we've been taking a curious look at the mind. And then next week, we'll end this series with looking at the 4th foundations, which is our mental formations, our perceptions, our biases and prejudices, the stories we tell. Today, I'd like to remind everybody that on Tuesday I brought forward a seed of thought to consider mutuality and animation. These are 2 words that invite the mind to consider the ways we connect to one another. We are intimately and intricately connected to each other in ways both seen and unseen. There are going to be people that we encounter that we feel highly animated toward. We really like them. We want to be around them all the time. And then there are those that we meet who we don't feel much about at all. It's kind of a neutral feeling. We may not remember their face or their name. They don't really do much by way of activating us. And then there are people that we feel aversion toward. We have a negative animation. And nevertheless, every single person is connected to us in some way. And so it's a way of looking at our animation, trying to become a little bit equanimous, a little bit neutral, so that we can open up our connections, soften our hearts, and recognize that thousands and thousands of people come together with experiences just like me, and they create convenience in my life, they ease my hardship, they do all kinds of things for me without me ever knowing. And so this is a wonderful way of focusing some energy on gratitude and appreciation. Today, I'd like to invite the mind to come into a different thought. And that is the thought of duality and non-duality. I'd also like to plant the word ego. I'd like to bring forward the words self. But the self words that I want to bring forward are self with a lowercase s and self with a capitalized S. Many of you probably know the legend of the Buddha, where he explored the spiritual practices of his day. The Buddha would have been well versed in the Hindu traditions of the Vedas, which were really aesthetic practices of meditation, sometimes even deprivation. The Buddha, the story goes, took some of these traditions to extremes. There were times where he was very indulgent just to experience what that was all about, seeking pleasure, fulfilling pleasure, being indulgent. And then he took it to the other extreme of being highly depriving. And there are images of the Buddha in sort of a skeletal nature. He really wanted to see what the body would do and how far he could push the body in his practice. And those two extremes represent the dualistic mind, the mind that thinks in either or terms, black and white, good or bad, this or that, right or wrong. It is a very, very pervasive form of mind, particularly in the West, where the mythology, the most influential mythology in the Western mind, is predicated upon good versus evil, heaven versus hell. So we have a framework of the mind that sets everything up in these extremes. We're either over on one end or we're over on the other. The Buddha, however, decided that something's amiss with this perspective. He found himself swinging wildly from one extreme to the other, and he wanted to see if he could cultivate a different way. So he meditated and meditated and meditated and meditated. And what he came up with is something called the middle way, where most of our true and authentic experiences happen. This is not to say that the two extremes don't exist. That's a very important thing to say. Extremes do exist. And so does everything in between. Our experiences of life are on a spectrum. And the point of practice and the point to coming into a more non-dual point of view, which means the gray zone, everything in between, things are both right and wrong, good and bad, and there are a whole lot more. That's the middle way. And that's what he encouraged us to discover for ourselves. I'm going to give you an example of this relative to recovery. And I'm going to be quite bold and audacious in presenting this example. And I'd like to put forward craving as an example, to put it in the context of dualistic mind and non-dualistic mind. Craving typically is considered bad. It's not okay. It's really uncomfortable. The mind becomes obsessed and neurotic. So on the one extreme, having a craving is not a good thing, and not having cravings is a good thing. And the whole point of what we learn in recovery is we're trying to get to a point where we have absolutely no cravings whatsoever. That would be really, really good. No cravings. And I say, good luck with that. Because to have cravings is to be human. And we engage spiritual practices not to become less human, but to become a better human being, a whole human being. So while it may be true that having cravings is bad and not having cravings is good, something is going on in between. That is an invitation. So that when you have a craving, when anyone has a craving, rather than react to the craving negatively or with fear or anger or worry, we can pause, we can practice, and we can pull our mind into a more neutral space, an in-between space, and say, wow, would you look at this craving? I wonder what this is all about. I wonder why it's come up for me. What can I learn from this arising? Do I have to react to this arising? Do I have to answer this arising? Do I have to be threatened and intimidated by this arising? Or can I simply let this arising arise and show me something? The Buddha taught that the more we engage our thoughts with curiosity and friendliness, with leniency and compassion, with joy and loving kindness, the less we'll volley in these extremes. And to do that, what we do, the result of this, is to mature the small self, the ego-driven self. Ego, in a spiritual sense, is typically depicted by a lowercase s, and the ego is running the show. It's in the driver's seat of your life. And there's a lot of spirituality that suggests we need to get rid of the ego. And once again, I would like to audaciously suggest good luck with that. The ego is simply a part of being human. It's who we are. We get to decide how it governs our lives. And so with these practices of mindfulness and looking at the mind, we can begin to mature and cultivate the capital S self, the wise self, the Buddha nature, the natural observer that can lean back and go, look at this that's going on. I wonder what's up with this. The ego, in its immature and unpracticed form, lives at the extremes. It is highly affected by the 8 worldly winds. So when we think about these extremes, positive and negative, and we put it in the context of the 8 worldly winds, let's just call it praise as the positive and blame as the negative. When we're receiving praise and we are governed by an immature ego, we're chasing it. We're going after it. We need more. It becomes a hungry ghost, an insatiable thing. We lose ourselves. And then when we don't get it, or when we receive criticism, the immature ego, the small self, starts to blame. Gets really defensive, highly threatened, super insecure. We're seeing this playing out in our political landscape, friends. We're seeing people who are requiring the narrative be only of a certain substance, a praising, positive substance. And if there's anything negative or questioning or challenging, that is met with severity. This is an unpracticed ego, and you can witness how it wreaks havoc in a person's ability to connect. It usually leads to violence and aggression and hostility. In the realm of recovery, when we are engaged in habit energy, when I am engaged in habit energy and I'm seeking pleasure, I can become obsessed with it and self-protected. And so that when anybody questions me about it, I get defensive, I feel threatened, I deny the degree of severity. That is my immature ego in the driver's seat of my life. And it wreaks havoc on my connection, on my sense of belonging, of my capacity to love, and of my ability to be honest, trustworthy, and real. And so we look at this, not because we're judging ourselves. Again, that's just more of the same. But looking at it with that friendly inquiry. Wow, would you look at this? Look at all the ways I'm getting super defensive. I wonder what this is all about. I wonder what the conditions are. Am I tired? Is the person who's questioning me and challenging me somebody I trust or somebody I feel threatened by and accused by? Is this something that's a surprise to me and I feel a little bit blindsided and ambushed? Is this a situation where I'm still getting something out of my habit energy and I don't want to give it up yet? To bring forward the maturing, wise self is reflected in one's capacity to ask these questions. Would you look at this? I wonder what this is all about. And when we engage this, it becomes so much easier to practice. That's true. I'm obsessing about this. I'm a little neurotic right now. I'm seeking pleasure without really giving it much consideration. You know, I don't have to be threatened by that because that is just true and not the whole truth. What else is true? And that question is the thing that brings us to the middle. What else is happening here? Both of these extremes are happening. What else is happening? I bring this forward, friends, because in the realm of recovery and support, there is a propensity for people to be really harsh and hard on themselves. I know I can be. I have a really vicious inner critic at times. And this inner critic is relentless, always present, never changes their tune, forever the taskmaster. That's just a part of my personality that I have to live with. But if I give it too much attention, I don't allow the other voices to come through too, like the voice of a friend, the voice of my cheerleader, the voice of my philosopher, the voice of my poet. Those voices that are softening and encouraging, that help me see the bigger picture. So when you find yourself being hard on yourself, negative, harsh, you can say, you know, this might be true. I didn't do that well. That was pretty stupid. And it's not the whole truth because I'm not stupid. I'm wise. And this was a moment of unskillfulness. What else is going on here? That, my friends, is a profound step in peacemaking in a world that is becoming increasingly hostile, aggressive, intolerant. And if we can start with ourselves, it will radiate out to our friends and family, to our communities, our cities and states, the nations and world. And it begins with your extraordinary capacity to notice, acknowledge, and be aware of your own mind. Friends, I recognize that that was a lot, and I want to thank you for the courtesy of your presence and your attention in listening to this. I'm passionate about it because I, in my own first person experience, know the value of shifting my mind from the extremes into something more fluid in the middle, in the in-between spaces. My life has been enriched in ways that I truly cannot express. And so a wonderful access point, a wonderful way to unlock this practice is to simply add very simple mantras to the in-breath and to the out-breath. And I would recommend that you say whatever is alive for you. I often say things like, breathing in, I calm my body. Breathing out, to see clearly. Breathing in, calm. Breathing out, clarity. Sometimes I'll say, breathing in, I feel panicked. Breathing out, I'm going to pause. Breathing in, panic. Breathing out, pause. Breathing in, craving arising. Breathing out, looking deeply, not reacting. Breathing in, craving. Breathing out, not reacting. It's so simple. It's so profound. And each and every one of us here today has the incorruptible capacity to practice in this way. Alrighty, friends, come back to your noble posture. And let's invite the body in this noble posture to engage sada, heart-led. And to do that, it's very, very easy. You just lift your shoulders up toward the ears, roll them back, and notice the heart being a little bit exposed. And as you bring your shoulders down, just keep that openness and that exposure, the heart lifted. Sada, heart-led life. As much as we laud and need a linear, logical mind, it has its limits. And so we have to practice and encourage the mind to partner with the heart. That is a source of creativity and feeling, intuition and guidance. And together, what the mind knows and what the heart feels creates a sense of harmony and resilience to keep going. What's coming alive for me in this moment is to dedicate this practice to the spirit of practice. And I'm thinking of Pema Chodron, who always liked to encourage her students to take a thought, take a theme, take a teaching, and then study it for the next 10 years, and then come back and tell her what they've learned. And the point is to recognize that none of these practices are a quick fix. Change is slow, so this is a grow slow endeavor. And as you go, may you delight in small wonders, constantly vying for your attention, cheering you on. We'll see you tomorrow. Namaste.